In this episode, we speak with Piotr Tomasik, co-founder and president at TensorWave, a cutting-edge cloud platform purpose-built for AI workloads that delivers high-performance computing with AMD MI300X accelerators and a best-in-class inference engine. TensorWave recently raised $100 million from Magnetar, AMD Ventures, Maverick Silicon, Nexus Venture Partners, and Prosperity 7. The capital infusion strengthens the company's ability to scale its infrastructure for memory-intensive AI workloads and expands its reach as a next-gen alternative in the AI and HPC cloud space. I am your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. Great to meet you.
So you recently closed a $100 million funding round with notable investors, and you're in the space of AI. I think the most notable thing is that your company is less than 2 years old. And I'm curious, since we're only 2 years in, not even, is what was the premise of the company when you started? Because you've raised in excess, I think, of over 140 million. But what was the premise of the company?
Yeah, so the premise was quite simple. Well, let me take a step back. The three of us, Derek, Jeff, and I, Derek's the CEO, Jeff's the chief growth officer, and I'm the co-founder, president, COO. We were good friends, and Jeff and I were playing pickleball in the summer of 23, and we were seeing what was happening in the data center GPU space with AMD GPUs being really highly sought after and no one could get their hands on them. And Derek and Jeff had previously started an FPGA cloud company. It's a very niche type of compute, but they were servicing customers like Intel and AMD and had a lot of connectivity in the data center space. And as such, they had a viewpoint that sort of went like this. Let's do something about what we see in the supply demand curve, but let's not be like the 50th NVIDIA cloud because there's no differentiation left there, right? And why would we try to do that? So we looked at the roadmap for other semi companies, and AMD's roadmap was really compelling to us. It had a lot more memory on each chip. They had a history of taking down titans in what they did in the CPU space with Intel. And, we just went all in on that. So that was the premise, that we could get on board early with AMD, be focused on AMD and deliver really phenomenal performance on workloads because of the memory, the amount of memory on every chip. And it's turning out that simple idea is turning into something big fast.
And this pickleball game, I presume the other unique thing is that it's probably happening in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's right. We're based in Las Vegas. I've been here over 20 years. Jeff relocated over the pandemic and Derek followed shortly afterwards.
And tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. I studied computer science at UNLV here locally. Met my wife there. She was also studying computer science, and as such, she was a Vegas native, born and raised, which is really rare in this city. And I was a Bay Area kid prior to that. Grew up in Pleasanton, California.
And then prior to co-founding TensorWave, you had been working in the tech sector.
That's right. I've been in startups my whole career. Got plucked out my senior year by a professor to join his green energy startup. Professors aren't very good fundraisers. So we ran out of money pretty quick, but I was hooked on wearing multiple hats. Did a lot of work in varying different industries as an IC, fintech, social media, startups, and then ended up co-founding a company called Influential in the early 10s. I was the co-founder CTO there. It was an 11-year overnight success. We sold to Publicis Group for $500 million. last summer. So it was a really nice outcome. But I stepped away from day to day in late 19, early 20, and joined a couple other companies as an executive and ended up creating a nonprofit called Startup Vegas here in Las Vegas to connect investors with entrepreneurs. And I was running events and got involved in angel investing, but had a real itch to get back into running companies. And so the whole TensorWave journey started.
And it's a lot of capital you've raised in a short period of time. And I presume it's because of the nature of your business and it's capital intensive. So maybe for the benefit of our audience, we can explain specifically what TensorWave does and where it fits within the overall AI landscape of companies.
Yeah, certainly. So we sit in the infrastructure layer. So below the frontier model companies like OpenAI and Gemini from Google and what have you, we actually provide the raw compute power that's needed to train and run or inference the models. The way we do that is we identify well-powered data center spaces right now across the US, but we're planning on expanding internationally soon. And we rack and stack or deploy these servers that we buy from OEMs like Supermicro, Computer, Dell, Lenovo could be a provider. And we network them all together using really high speed networking in order for all these GPUs to be able to think together and train the models correctly and efficiently. We've developed a software layer over the top of that that monitors each system's health and telemetry in order to try to predict any sort of downtime for the customer ahead of time. Also, allowing for easy deployments across the fleet of GPUs. And of course, segmenting each customer's data logically from one another so that we can have really great, compliant, and safe environments for our customers. But fundamentally, the business model is that the customers pay for long-term reserve time contracts on these GPU clusters. So it takes the form of, let's say, $2 a GPU hour. And then they book that for terms of as little as 2 years and up to 5.
Mm-hmm. And are these clusters, your servers, are they sitting in your own data centers or are they part of other large scale data centers?
Yeah, so they're not our own data centers, but they might as well be in the sense that we are co-located, but we're often the only customer of the given physical data center because we're taking so much power. This new era of data centers is quite different. So there's a lot of companies that have large data centers that have been caught flat-footed because they weren't planning for the power density that these data center GPUs use. So for context, traditionally, a rack or a stack of servers might use 15 kilowatts or like 45 kilowatts max in like an air-cooled data center. And now we're pushing the boundaries up to 400 kilowatts, pretty soon 800 kilowatts per rack of server, right? We're going to hit megawatt racks, in the next couple of years, which is really crazy to think of. But that's why we take the whole facilities because we need every single ounce of power and cooling to get this stuff running. And obviously, your earlier question to address it, yeah, it's a really capital intensive business. Each of these GPUs cost on the order of $20,000, and there's 8 of them in every single server. So you can start to put all those numbers together and imagine, that 143 million that we raised goes out the door pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to the $100 million Series A, we raised it alongside a very substantial prepaid customer contract that allowed us to go build out an 8,000 GPU cluster. We couldn't have done it with just the $100 million. There was around $270 million of CapEx involved in that.
And so the scale up of your business, it sounds like it's somewhat concentrated with a particular set of clients.
I mean, yeah, it's probably 9 clients so far. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, much like CoreWeave, It's a very recent and a good analogous company to ours. They have a lot of customer concentration as well, but we're trying to be as diversified as possible. But it's hard because, when the customer is knocking on your door and they want something, you're not going to say no.
I presume the customer is also using NVIDIA-based infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a really great concept to dig into. A lot of our customers, the majority, they use NVIDIA, and then we come in and convince them to have a diversified strategy
Hmm.
because you can't be beholden to one supplier, as we saw in the summer of 23 when the NVIDIA supply chains got a little hairy. And people recognize that. And it's not the only reason that people select AMD. There's actual performance benchmarks where AMD outperforms NVIDIA largely, and that has to do with, again, back to the memory that I spoke about. There's a couple of workloads where that really comes out and shines, like video generation apps and long context text apps. So like if you want to index an entire encyclopedia and make sure that your model isn't hallucinating, it's much better to run on an AMD GPU than an NVIDIA GPU. And there's a litany more of examples, but I think those are simple ones.
What would you say is the most acute constraint to scaling? Is it that you can't get enough space or enough servers allocated to you in a given data center? I mean, it seems like on the market side, the demand is there.
Mhm.
So where is the constraint? Presumably, you could just scale very rapidly for the foreseeable next few years.
Yeah, the constraint is in electricity, fundamentally. Very simple thing, electrons. So you need to find electricity and then well built out sites. I mean, you can go greenfield and start building on spec and be ready in a couple years, but that's not the speed at which this market is moving. We hope to do some of that alongside our deployment soon, meaning building our own data centers with some partners. But right now, you have to identify power, space, and a way to cool the systems. So water is like a third tranche to that.
Mm-hmm. And which part of the country right now has the most electricity available?
Well, very famously, Stargate's happening in Texas, right? And so
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
a lot of work being done in Texas to generate power using nat gas and other sources to get up and running quickly. I mean, Elon's Colossus is powered by nat gas as well, I believe, in Memphis, Tennessee, with
Mhm.
some temporary gen sets, stuff like that. So we're moving very quick. We need the United States to start approving nuclear power plants again or something in
Mhm.
order to keep up with this demand in this AI age.
Uh-huh. And do you see a point at which in the near term where we're going to be somewhat stalled, meaning we're waiting on more electricity?
I think that that's a real concern of, I think, all of us, and it should be for anyone living in the United States if we want to be the winners of the AI race,
Mhm.
especially. We're just not approving enough power generation right now. If you look at a graph of the United States the last couple decades, it looks pretty flat. Obviously, no one foresaw the age of the transformer, but now that it's here, we have to adapt.
Mhm. Would like to talk a little bit about your investors. It seems somewhat obvious that you would take in capital from AMD Ventures, but I guess there could have been a choice. You could have selected other capital providers. Did you consider potentially partnering up with other investors?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were a great deal of good partners that, stood up and wanted to be a part of it. But I think we have a real great stable of people behind us. Magnetar Capital leading the Series A with AMD Ventures was the real stamp of approval. They famously got behind CoreWeave in like 2021 or something, like way before any of this happened, and brought them all the way to IPO. And their intention is to guide us in that direction as well. We also have Maverick Capital and Nexus Venture Partners and Prosperity 7, which is a Saudi Aramco arm of VC arm.
Mhm.
So,
And we talked to all different types of investors and CEOs and executives of companies. with different growth models, you're obviously a hyper growth model. And so your investors, the way you kind of interact with or maybe leverage your investors is different than how other maybe more steady growth models will work with their investors. What's the value that you've seen your investors bring to the table other than financial capital?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I mean, Magnetar created the project financing stack for GPUs. So that's invaluable for us to be able to fast forward and speak about these things really intellectually with, bankers on the other end and data center providers. In addition to that, the vast majority of our investor base has helped us with intros into potential customers and now current customers. That's been really important in order for us to galvanize the sort of growth that we need to undertake and the capital expenditures that we have to go after. So, I mean, referring some really top-notch talent to us, we definitely have a group that's adding value. I can't say the same thing for some other companies that I've been a part of, but yeah.
And obviously, there's the capital need will continue to be there. Is there kind of an IPO in the horizon?
I mean, we're charging ahead as quickly as we can
Uh-huh.
towards that goal. That is the goal, this company, maybe 3, 4 years down the line, aggressive timelines.
We're coming up on the tail end of the conversation. I have two standard closing questions. One
Yeah,
is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
sure. There was a gentleman, he passed away last year. His name was Ryan Smith. He was the director of economic development at the city of Las Vegas. And he reached out to me. It was a cold call, asked me out for coffee, and just wanted to know what we were doing. Like he saw all these articles about how well Influential was doing, but they had never met us and just asked me to meet him. And it started like a really interesting path in my life where I got involved in community service, essentially, getting into the governor's office of economic development, serving on a board there, and just seeing how the sausage is made on a civic level. And I was so impressed with how he was able to walk into any room and just contemporaneously speak about almost any subject and captivate people. And I really strive to be like him and help people in the same way that he did while he was here with us.
Well, that segues into our last question, which is what charity cause or other endeavor are you passionate about?
I mean, economic development, diversifying the economy in Las Vegas. That's my primary aim and goal with my nonprofit, Startup Vegas. You can find us at startup.vegas.
Fantastic. And maybe just one last closing question. What's one thing about Las Vegas that most people maybe don't realize or are aware of?
Yeah, that's an easy one. When you live here, it's really easy to maintain relationships with a great many people that you wouldn't expect, meaning almost everyone in your professional and personal life makes their way out to Las Vegas like once a year. And guess what? The first call is, hey, do you want to come down and see us while we're here, Peter? And it makes for a really cool lifestyle where you see people that I'm sure if I lived in Topeka, Kansas, I'd never see them, right? Or if I had stayed in the Bay Area, even because people don't want to drive from the city to Pleasanton or what have you. So it's
Right.
fun to see everybody, including our customers.
Awesome. Peter, want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.